This morning. My name is Kenyora Parham. I am the Executive Director of End Rape on Campus, and our mission works to end campus sexual violence. And we do that in 3 ways. Providing direct support for student survivors in their communities, prevention education, and policy reform. I'm joined today by student survivors and advocates and my colleagues in this movement. We met with representatives from the U.S. Department of Education today, and we had one message. We need Ed to act now. We have seen thousands of students and advocates protest across the country because they are fed up with the ways their campuses handle sexual assault and the failure of people in power to hold perpetrators accountable and protect student survivors. These protests help to hold colleges and universities accountable. And we, as a collective, are proud to stand in solidarity with these students as they stand up against sexual assault and be a voice for student survivors everywhere. But students should not have to carry that burden. We need the U.S. Department of Education to do their part. And that's why we're gathered this morning and in this fight. The Title IX regulations established under former Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, allows campuses to sweep sexual assault under the rug, thus allowing predators to go unpunished. At the same time, these regulations limit student survivors' access to support and resources that keep them in school. Today, we delivered more than 50,000 petition signatures from students, parents, lawmakers, advocates, and many more who are demanding that the U.S. Department of Education act now to protect student survivors. While the Biden administration has acknowledged the need for change, if the policy isn't changed before next May, schools could continue to discriminate against survivors for 2 more years. We can't wait, and student survivors can't wait. Too many survivors have been denied the most basic protections by their school, and they should not have to wait for years from now to have their rights protected and campuses free from violence. Because right now, we are in the midst of a double red zone, a time between when students arrive on campus to Thanksgiving break, where more than 50% of all sexual assaults occur. College-age students between the ages of 18 to 24 will experience sexual assault at a rate that is 3 times higher than other groups. And today, nearly 40% of survivors who report to their school will be pushed out of education. And we know that student survivors of color, low-income students, LGBTQIA, students and survivors with neurodiversity are disproportionately impacted by sexual assault. The Department of Education has an opportunity to protect them and fight for them. And we hope that they will step up to do just that. We, as a collective, are in agreement with survivors and advocate Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley when she says those closest to the pain must be the ones closest to the power. So today you will hear powerful testimonies from several phenomenal student survivors and advocates who will be sharing their stories with you about why they need Title IX now and not later. You will also hear from my fellow colleagues to stress not only the importance of our demands, but the urgency. At the end, we will transition to any questions you might have. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Sage Carson, manager of Know Your Nine.
Those laws that survive survivors and advocates that have joined us here today have fought for to pass. And 3, we ask that the Department of Education allow students to file complaints with their Office for Civil Rights when their rights are violated. Currently, students only have 180 days from the first instance of a violation of their rights to file a complaint. We are asking students as young as 6 and 7, middle schoolers, college students, to understand that their rights are violated, learn what the Department of Education is, learn what their Office for Civil Rights are, and file an administrative complaint within 180 days of their school violating their rights for the first time. We delivered these demands today with, when the last time I checked, was over 55,000 signatures from folks around the country. Our hope entering this meeting was that the department could let us know what they can agree to, let us know what our demands, negotiate with us, and find a good agreement. Instead, the department shirked responsibility, turned it around to students and said, tell us what we can do to help you all prevent violence on your campus. And truthfully, this meeting was a waste of many of these survivors' times who joined us to share their trauma, their stories, and their urgency for these demands today. I am sick and tired of asking students, asking young people, asking kids to come and meet with folks to share their trauma, to teach young folks politics. It is unacceptable to continue to ask people to share stories of their trauma over and over and over again to meet the most reasonable needs that folks have put forward. So, today, we are disappointed and we are angry that the department looked folks in the face today and said, we're doing our best, but we don't know what we can do. We know that there is urgency, we know that we communicated that, but we need more from this Department of Education. The department has until the end of October to meet these demands, to find a reasonable space, and to come to the table with us again. And we are still here. We will continue to be here, and we will continue to be a resource for this department to be able to meet the needs of student survivors. But it's time for them to step up, to support survivors, and to ensure that the federal government can once again support survivors and ensure their access to education. I'm very, very excited to introduce my dear friend and colleague and co-organizer, Talia Charles, to speak more about her experience and why this is so urgent. But I am again disappointed to say that this meeting is such a frustrating end to what was a really hopeful day.
My name is Talia Charles, and I'm a policy organizer with Kenyora. If the Department of Education wants to correct the damage done by Betsy DeVos and ensure that no student is pushed out of school because of sexual violence, they must prioritize K-12 student survivors. Many K-12 schools have not ensured that all of their students have access to an educational environment free from gender violence, either because of a lack of resources or a lack of empathy, or both. Since 2018, at least 330 lawsuits have been filed against K-12 school districts for mishandling incidents of sexual misconduct and denying students adequate protection. Navigating Title IX as a K-12 survivor can be difficult because of unclear policies and a lack of knowledge about legal protections. Survivors often hesitate to reach out for help due to fear of punishment or retaliation. Unfortunately, their fears are not unfounded. Many schools devote their institutional power to persecuting survivors for asserting their civil rights. Schools have valiantly ignored survivors' reports of sexual violence, expelled them for asking for help, and denied them basic protections that would help them stay safe in school. The Department of Education has an opportunity to champion policies that protect young survivors, survivors such as myself, such as a concerted Title IX education and awareness campaign in K-12 schools, a requirement that every K-12 school have a designated and defined Title IX coordinator and a confidential survivor advocate to assist the survivor through the reporting process, police-free schools, and supportive accommodations. K-12 survivors deserve an educational environment where they can develop their academic and extracurricular interests. Only by crafting Title IX policies and sexual violence policies can K-12 survivors with mind, can the Department of Education provide an educational environment where all students can flourish. Next, I have the honor of introducing my friend Elisa, who is a survivor and student organizer at the Delaware State University.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Lisa Cartagena, a student survivor and organizer from Delaware State University. Yes, the university that our current president, Joseph Biden, loves to claim. I wish our conversation came under better circumstances, and I wish I could say I'm happy to be here. Unfortunately, this was not a choice for me. I should be in class not begging for basic civil rights. But I can't stand by anymore as I watch my university blatantly violate the rights of survivors. My university has a history of survivor intimidation and retaliation, yet they are never held accountable. Currently, the Department of Education only allows 180 days from the first violation of our rights to file a claim with their Office of Civil Rights and to hold our school accountable for violating the law. There's a survivor I know that is actively fighting against my university for basic rights. She didn't file within 180 days of the first incident because of this, the school continued to abuse her. She was in multiple leadership positions, and yet reporting her assault, she was removed. She was also fined, and she was forced to go through judicial affairs. She was eventually pushed out of school, and there's another survivor who was told by a school official that her assault was merely a misunderstanding between her and her boyfriend. Lastly, there is me. I have faced countless retaliation from not only my abuser, but my university. Every semester I have to fight for my right to stay in school. These are just 3 stories in a series of misconduct. Due to the lack of urgency and responsiveness from my university, I was forced to create an organization called GIVE. This organization is dedicated to educating the campus community around sexual assault. Ironic, as those who are supposed to be doing this are in a building right behind me. We are forced to be a safe haven for survivors because they do not trust the destructive system we call Title IX. Survivors are losing access to essential resources due to the failure of our Title IX office. This is pushing survivors out of school. Survivors do not believe that a Title IX investigation can be trusted. Therefore, they refuse to report. The Department of Education had a decision to make here today, knowing that it will affect thousands of survivors. Yet they chose the easy way out. I am livid that the Department of Education is turning their back on survivors. We need Ed Act, and we need it now. So therefore, I would like to introduce the floor to Shawali. I'm so sorry. Let's edit that. Shawali, my good friend and dear sister from the National Women's Law Center.
Good morning. My name is Shawali Patel, and I'm a Title IX Civil Rights Attorney at the National Women's Law Center. And I am honored to be here today alongside student survivors and advocates. I come to this work as a former campus advocate myself and an educator who had taught and worked with students in middle and high school, worked with them to address sexual violence and harassment in schools. Prior to joining the Law Center, I was at the Department of Education working on Title IX policies and sexual harassment, but I left in 2018 because I was troubled by how clearly Betsy DeVos, the leader of the department under the Trump administration, was not interested in doing the most basic element of her job, which was supporting students. Since NWLC was founded in 1972, the same year that Title IX was passed, the Law Center has been fighting for student survivors. And during the last few exhausting years, we have been angered and disgusted by the changes to Title IX made from the DeVos rule, which have only swept sexual harassment under the rug. Changes that were made with the help of men's rights advocates and sexist extremists. DeVos rolled back Title IX protections that have been in place for decades, dramatically reducing schools' obligations to respond to harassment and discouraging students from reporting harassment by creating a hostile, burdensome, and unfair process, including procedures that are not required for any other type of student or employee misconduct. It's nothing short of discrimination, requiring this type of procedure only for sexual harassment complaints. It relies on sex-based stereotypes and a toxic belief that people who report sexual violence are somehow less credible and require more scrutiny. Students we hear from at the Law Center said that they were already discouraged from reporting in the first place, that they have been met with an unfair skepticism and at times even blamed for their own harassment, that their school's process was extremely unfair, and that the trauma they experienced both from their assault and from going through their school's process stayed with them for years. We sued the department and even secured a victory in our lawsuit, where the judge removed a pretty significant part of that rule. But that's not enough. The longer it takes to undo the DeVos changes to the rule, the longer the harmful rule will be in effect and students will have to suffer. And we just met with the department and told them this. And I'm hopeful that after hearing from the students and the powerful information that they've provided to them, that they will take steps to restore Title IX to its purpose, to support students and to protect against discrimination. As someone who once filed a sexual harassment complaint in my workplace, I know how critical strong institutional responses and civil rights protections are for preventing and remedying harm from sexual harassment. Student survivors have been fighting for years to have their civil rights be taken seriously. And today, students are asking again for the Department of Education to act swiftly to protect them from sexual harassment. It's time for schools and for our government to match the seriousness of the students and survivors here today who are demanding change by quickly undoing Betsy DeVos' changes to the Title IX rule and to restore civil rights protection for all students. And now I'm happy to introduce Lily from American University, who is an incredible student activist for safety.
Good morning. My name is Lillian Frame. I'm from Cape Elizabeth, Maine. I'm a student at American University, and I'm an organizer with Safe Bay, a survivor-founded and youth-led organization. I had prepared remarks today, but after that meeting, I don't think what I had to say is enough. That meeting, the words that I've heard the most often were urgent and priority. The Biden administration has been in office since January. How many months has it been? Betsy DeVos signed this rule into law with just a stroke of her pen. It didn't take her any time to dismantle our rights. Why should it take us any time to give them back? The decisions made here in this building don't just affect college students, nor are they abstract concepts. They're life-altering and potentially life-ending. Survivors are 10 times more likely to attempt suicide than others, and that rate rises dramatically when the first assault happens before the age of 16. Survivors are at increased risk of PTSD, eating disorders, depression, self-harm, addiction, and suicidal ideations. This is hard for you to hear. If you're getting uncomfortable, good. Sexual violence is not something you can turn away from. To the Department of Education, I asked today, how many more lives are they willing to lose? They couldn't give me an answer. To the Department of Education, I asked today, why did you tell me I have an army of angels? I shouldn't need an army of angels because none of those survivors should have taken their own lives because of their assaults. I don't need an army of angels. I don't need an army of students standing behind me. I don't need an army at all. I need the people in power, the people we elected, the people who were appointed to actually do their jobs for once and actually protect us. And now I am happy to introduce Bella Travis and Emily Minster from It's On Us AU.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Minster, and I'm one of the founders of It's On Us at American University, and I'm currently a sophomore.
And I'm Bella Travis, and I'm also a sophomore at American University and the other co-campus organizer.
So I had an adult on my campus advise me to avoid the Title IX office at all costs because they would screw up my life more than they would help me. Imagine being told that the only resource you're aware of, the one presented as the best option, the one that's supposed to deliver us justice, is only going to make everything worse. This is the unfortunate reality for the majority of student survivors who feel as though they have nowhere to turn. They suffer rather than subject themselves to a Title IX investigation in which they have no control, in which they are asked questions that gaslight and re-traumatize them, in which by federal law they are forced to face their abuser again and again. Title IX has now become the worst option for most of us, and we desperately need to change that. Safety for us, safety for our friends, safety for our classmates and our fellow students cannot and should not wait.
A girl was assaulted off campus and did not immediately realize that what she experienced was assault. But when she did, she discovered that there was nothing the school could or would do about it because her assault did not occur at school. A student had their name released without consent in a public statement sharing the details of her Title IX case and subsequently police harassment of her abuser and his friends. She felt unsafe on campus and was afraid of constant and continued retaliation. A group of girls were drugged by several lieutenants of assault. They reported this incident, but he was suspended for just 2 weeks, only to return to live on their floor, walk by them in the lounge, ride the elevator with them, and sit across from them in class. He got to sit on the quad while the girls who drugged wondered every day if their college was a safe place. The students like me who had heard of this incident questioned whether our Title IX office truly cared about the safety of students. This all occurred in 2021, a year that started with only a limited number of students living on campus, only freshmen staying in dorms, with the return of in-person classes this semester. With both the freshman and sophomore classes coming to college for the first time, and upperclassmen who are desperate to return to the pre-COVID college life, students are more vulnerable than ever to sexual violence.
I just want to say that prevention measures are not enough. It takes ages to change this culture of sexual violence that we have on our campuses, and it shouldn't be on us as survivors to protect ourselves, our friends, and our classmates. We should feel safe and excited as we return to campus, but instead we're all scared. Because how can we feel safe when there's no comprehensive policy to protect us? How can we feel safe when now we expect to see our abusers every single day? And how can we feel safe when the one place we're supposed to turn for help exposes us to retaliation every single day? With the current Title IX policies in place, students feel hesitant to report their assaults because we know the system won't protect us. We see it all the time. We feel unsafe on campus and unheard by administrators. Each day that Title IX remains unchanged is another day when students who were assaulted face consequences far more grave than the consequences for those who assault them. Another day when survivors have to debate if it's worth it for them to report their assault or even to stay in school. The safety and well-being of students should be the #1 priority of the education through action, not just through talk. By waiting until 2022 to make changes in our Title IX policy, they are telling survivors that justice can wait. Is the safety of students not important enough for them to address now? We're here to call on our officials, our administration, and those who serve us and keep making these promises to change the Title IX rule by the end of the month and to keep students and all of us safe. Thank you, and now we're going to turn it over to Tracy Vichers from It's On Us.
Hello everyone, thank you for coming today. I'm Tracy Vichers, the Executive Director of It's On Us. I will be facilitating the Q&A portion of this press conference. If you have a question for myself or any of the folks who have spoken here today, please come forward, state your name, your media outlet, and your question. All right, if there are no questions, that's totally fine. We are happy to hang around and answer any questions on a one-on-one basis as well. So thank you all so much for coming here today. It is on Ed to act now.